So I've been playing Wuthering Waves since release, and I wanted to give some of my opinions on it. I want to clarify that this video will sound harsh, but I'm going to be mostly focusing on what's negative, because that's what I remember about it. I would rate this game probably around a 7.5 out of 10, if I had to, just thinking about it, and we'll go into more details on why I'm rating it how I am later. But I don't think this is a bad game, but I am going to do a lot of complaining in this video. One of my first complaints is that the tutorials are dog shit. So there's these character tutorials that basically only show you how to basic auto and skill, and like, thanks game, I know how I can read the hotkeys that I rebinded to make my playing experience better. They don't really do anything, and I still don't know about how basic functions like the swap out mechanics work. I know sometimes you get this cool animation. I don't know why it happens. There's not a tutorial for that. They don't teach you. Well, they teach you that like when there's a glowing circle you can swap, and it's like good, but they don't tell you how to do it. So I don't know the mechanic well, because the tutorial didn't teach me. This, of course, isn't like game-breaking. I'll eventually learn the mechanic, yes, but it's annoying that the game doesn't teach me. I'm probably gonna have to watch a YouTube video on how the swap mechanic works, because it seems really important. It's a lot of damage that you're missing, but I can't get access to it because I don't know how it functions. I would like to say that I have experienced some crashing on my end. My computer is fine, but the game seems shaky. Like, 90% of the time it works, and I will concede that I don't remember the 90% of the time that it works, because I remember the 10% of the time where I'm fighting a level 120 bear that one-shots me and I lag and I get one-shot. That's what I remember from it. And it feels really bad when the game works 90% of the time and then there's just 10% of the time the game shits itself and you die for it. On that note, I've also experienced some bugs here or there. They were more funny than, like, anything. I think, like, it happened when I was picking up, like, an explosive to throw it, and then I threw it, and then I didn't leave the state that I had the thing picked up, so I couldn't auto-attack, and I just reset the game. And it got rid of it, so it wasn't, like, a super game-breaking experience, and it was kind of funny. I don't know the specifics on what happened, and I do know that I was not recording at that time. So I can't, like, prove that I had this glitch. It's not that big of a deal, but there are bugs. It's like day 1, day 2 of a game. There's gonna be some kinks that haven't been completely worked out. That's fine. But, I'm just reporting that I've experienced some bugs that forced me to reset the game. The first 20 or 30 minutes of my experience was with a story that was incredibly poorly voice directed. So the first 3 characters that you meet, I don't remember their names, but the girl with the gun, the wind girl with the sword, and Baiji, I think her name is, the healer. They all sound the same, and they all sound super monotone. And that's like the first 30 minutes of your experience in the game. And it sucks ass. And like, it is such a turnoff. Because like the combat that you get started off with is honestly super fun. But, like, that's the only thing keeping you in the game. Maybe if you go out of your way to explore, that can keep you in the game. But, like, don't rush through the story. You're not really missing a whole lot of anything. The combat is honestly a 9 or maybe even a 10 out of 10, depending on what games you compare it to. The combat feels super smooth. I will say the only movement option I didn't enjoy at first was the jump. I thought the jump outside of combat was super janky. However, I did end up getting used to it. So it's not that big of a deal. You can get used to the jump. It's just faster than I'm used to with most games because you go up and then you go immediately down, and it's kind of jerky. That's the only movement option that I wasn't like 100% on board with, but now that I've played the game for a little bit longer than like 20, 30 minutes, it stopped bothering me, but it could bother some new players. You do get used to it, it's fine. You can deal with that small little jerky aspect, and eventually you'll get used to the movement because the game is faster paced than something like Genshin Impact, where I'd argue that game is slower. Um, like it's kind of hard to say like exactly. It just feels like you have more time in between each attack, so it just makes the game feel slower, and your character also physically feels faster. So honestly, for me, that's a good thing because I feel like I have more control over my character because I can make like micro adjustments. Um, Also on control of character, I think the dodging, it is one of the best dodges that I've felt in a gacha game. On that note, something good. I really like the movement. Running up walls is so fucking cool. Like doing like backflips to get onto like what you need to get onto. Like as you swing onto the platform because there was a little ledge, so you like swing over the ledge. That's like super cool. It's super satisfying. Running doesn't take stamina like it does in every other game. So like you can just run infinitely. It makes the terrain traversal super fun. And and while I do think eventually there'll be less stuff to do because like there'll be less chests after you collect them, so there'll be like the open world will eventually become less fun to traverse. Right now, we're currently in the phase where there's like a bunch of treasure chests, and like that's super fun. Eventually, that won't be the case. I think the ecosystem will allow for like running around and grinding mobs, so at least that will still happen. So I think the exploration is better than Genshin Impact's. And for people wondering, I don't think that the exploration part of this game is super hard. I thought the overworld was really, really easy, and when it was getting advertised as quote unquote hard at Genshin Impact, it's not really hard Genshin Impact, because I personally felt like the overworld was super, super easy. I think it's going to have a slightly higher ceiling than Genshin Impact. So it has the same floor that Genshin Impact has, but the ceiling is going to be a little bit harder. Now, I have played through a little bit of the Spiral Abyss equivalent, and it's about exactly what you expect. It's a time trial. All of the enemies are super overinflated, and it's kind of just stat crunch. I didn't really like it. I have not tried the hologram bosses because I haven't unlocked them yet. There was also a simulated universe. I think it's a limited time event right now that I've played. That was pretty fun. You play as one character, so you don't have to do any of the swapping, and you get buffs and stuff, which is like cool. If it's a limited time event, I think that's really cool, and like maybe they bring it back from time to time, so you don't have to farm it every single like day or like week or something like you have to do in Honkai Star Rail. It's just, oh, this mode is back. It's fun. I haven't played it in a month or two. So you get that same, like, oh boy, I wonder what buffs they added. And so I think that this has potential to be a pretty fun endgame. Maybe something like Contingency Contract, which if you don't know, in Arknights, it's a seasonal endgame. So it's not there every single day, and it only shows up every couple months. But when it does show up, you get cool in-game content. And I think that's a really cool way to do in-game. When it, like, I think it just works really well for gacha games because you're not grinding your ass off every, like, day or week on end game. It just comes around seasonally, and it gives, like, newer players a reason to build their characters because, oh, well, it's gonna come back in 6 months and I gotta get ready for it. So I think it has the potential to be a pretty good end game system. Back onto the negatives, I've already talked about the voice acting, but I think the story is honestly really weak, and I don't know how they can fix it. So my problem with the story is the rover. The rover is basically a plot MacGuffin, and everybody tells you how special you are. I think it's super lazy. I hate it. And in other games where, like, the amnesiac trope, I hate the amnesiac trope. I'm going to pick Arknights as an example because I think they do the amnesiac trope really well. And by they do it really well, I mean they completely ignore their main character and basically half of the side stories because they can go in between different worlds. And so you can just get the cool characters that you want to interact with without the amnesiac in the story. And so you get really good world building that way. And that's why I like the world building in Arknight so much, is because it doesn't center around you. I don't see, with the setup how they currently did it, with the rover, how they are going to do that. I rate the story probably a 5 out of 10. And, I guess I should, give some clarifications on how I'm rating it. I'd rate the Inazuma, like the Kazuha's second story quest where they talk about, they just name drop a bunch of proper nouns, and it's terrible, the sword one. Like I'm sure there was some, like, lore nerd who really liked it. Everybody else hated that shit. I rate that like a 2 out of 10. It was terrible. Like, the payoff was bad. Like, everything about it was bad. I was asleep for 2 hours while mashing through it. Just praying to God they would just shut the fuck about the Amanuma, the Amanuma. I didn't care. It's not as bad as that, but the fact that I'm even comparing the two, I feel like I'm getting name dropped a lot of things right now, and like maybe 10 minutes later they explain it. Maybe. They did that with, like, the main villains. They didn't do it with some other things. It's kind of, it's a new story. They're getting their feel. It's not great. I haven't completed the 5th arc. I think I've only completed up to 4. Because I haven't leveled my world up to 21, I'm purposely keeping it lower level so I can easily grind all of the materials out so I can level up my characters the second that I hit world cap. Just something that I wanted to do. But yeah, I think the story is like a 4 or 5 out of 10. I think Scar specifically had really good voice direction. And I swear that's the entire voice direction budget. Everybody else is, like, a mid. Like, some of them are serviceable, some of them are terrible. And it's like the 50-50. I swear most guys are fine. I don't know why, but, like, the guys have better voice direction. It's just how I feel. But, yeah, the story, it's not great right now. And I also don't see how they can fix it without just, like, making the rover not an amnesiac and a real character. Like, just deciding, nah, we're not doing that. So, unless they change their story beat and make us not a plot MacGuffin, I don't see it improving above a 6, maybe a 7. 7 is the highest that I could see this going. So I wanted to go a touch on the combat, because a lot of people are saying that it feels really good, and I agree. It feels really good, however, and it is also harder than Genshin Impact. That is a good thing. To critique how it is harder than Genshin Impact, however, I feel like it's just a stat check. The reason why I am struggling against the 120 level 120 bear isn't because the bear has this really interesting move set. It's because I'm level 40. I'm locked at level 40, and the guy is level 140. He just one-shots me. Like, that's why it's hard. You have to dodge everything. It's just a basic mob, so the moves are less telegraphed as well than a boss. So, to go in a little bit more detail, I liked the reward for beating the level 120 bear. He dropped a gold version of himself, so like a 5-star version. So he dropped a 5-star echo. And like, that's really cool. You got an achievement. I felt really good about that. But it's kind of, and there's like multiple, I've met like some mushrooms that also have this, and like I've met like some enemies up on like a roof that's hard to get to that also have this, like, oh, they're like level 80, they're like double your level. It's not, they're not hard because the enemies or the group of enemies have an interesting dynamic where they work together and they wombo combo you. They are hard because they all one-shot you. And so it's not like an interesting hard, it's a stat check hard. And I think that that should be noticed and critiqued. I look forward to more interesting enemy designs. I will concede that I have not fought every boss, and all of the bosses seem to have unique patterns. Like, I think I fought this ice boss that like goes invisible. That's really cool. I like that. We should have more of those type of enemies where, like, maybe not invisible specifically, but like, oh, here's this mechanic. You hit this thing to knock the boss down and hit him, right? And like, and he has like I think like boss mechanics like that are really cool. And I think the combat system is going to be really fun once they start working out the kinks and making enemy designs more unique. And having like varied attack patterns. But as of right now, I'd rate it a 9 out of 10. It could go to a 10 out of 10 depending on enemy design specifically. And I do want to clarify, I think that your movement options are a 10 out of 10 in combat, and like the enemies that you're fighting are like a 7 out of 10. That's why I'm rating it about a 9. I think the movement is more important than the enemy design, but they've nailed the movement. So I want them to now nail enemy design. I think the best way that I could summarize Wuthering Waves is, in Fallout, they put all of their points into strength, and then they came across a charisma check. I feel like the optimization is serviceable, but not great. And the actual gameplay of the game is super fun. So, like, you were gonna have so much fun fighting like this super hard enemy, and then it's gonna lag, and then you're gonna die, and it's gonna feel super, super bad. But like, when it doesn't lag, it's super, super fun. I honestly recommend giving it a try, but just note, it might not run that great. I have a pretty good PC, and I'm still experiencing frame drops, some lag here and there. I really hope it gets fixed because I am having so much fun actually playing the game. I just really hope it gets optimized to the point where, like, a lot of other PCs can run it. I don't know how this is a mobile game. I don't know how a phone could run this. Like, it's the best mobile game that phones can't run. Like, that's how I feel, honestly, about it. I've heard a lot of complaints about the optimization and it running like a slideshow. It's not that bad for me, but it occasionally does freeze up. It's a good game. If your PC can run it, I honestly recommend you play. And I think that should summarize at least some of my more important initial thoughts. I might come back to it and explore what the end game is like when I get to the end game. It would be a problem if I was at end game with level 40 characters. I'm not at end game, so that's a good thing. I hope you liked the video. I hope this was an informative video on your part to help you judge if this game was worth it. And I honestly hope that you sit down and try the game. I think it's a really good game. It's just, I'd rate it, and I guess I should come back to the 7.5 rating. I think that if they clear up some of their kinks, they get either a better story, the game actually functions 100% of the time, or like, and by better story, I also am including like better voice direction. Or like they get really, really, really good enemy design. I think that I could bump it up to an 8. But if, for example, the end game is like not that good, I could see me bumping it down to a 7. So currently I'm rating it a 7.5 because I'm currently in between those two ratings, and I'd like to end on a whole number. So it'd be an 8 or a 7. But I haven't decided which, if it's an 8 or a 7 out of 10. So I hope that was at least informative. I haven't quite made up my mind if it's like a good game or a really good game. But it's a good game either way. So if your computer can in fact run it and it's not a slideshow, I honestly recommend you pick it up and try it. The combat feels super good. And like, yeah, they put all of their points into combat. Like, they put all their points into strength. There's a reason why people are talking about this combat and this movement system. They're phenomenal. Everything else about the game leans to just serviceable, good, or like mediocre. Or sometimes it's just plain out, straight up bad. But like, the gameplay is super fun. And I'm having a blast playing the game. So that was actually way longer outro than what I had planned. But I hope this was informative. Bye, and have a good day.